focusing on TV for a moment then, because at the end of 2011 it seemed that most were saying that it was going to be a closer race, well certainly than it has been so far. Is that bad news for advertisers, Toby?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think Seven's had a really good start, but I also think Seven traditionally has quite a good start to the year as well. I think you've got a lot of good programmes coming through from from 9 and 10, so we'll see a bit of a resurgence there in some of those markets. Actually, 9's doing quite well this year. 10's having a bit of a tough time, but they've got a lot of good products. I think one of the interesting things about Channel 10 is if you look at their 2 top performing programmes of the year so far, they're actually brand new shows to the network. So they're doing a good job of bringing in new programmes too. So there should be quite a lot of optimism, I think, although bits of it are a bit tougher for some markets.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, we had a quick look at the last 4 weeks, the most recent survey, and there's actually a 17% gap between the third aggregated and the first aggregated network, which is a huge gap. I think if the market was significantly more buoyant, I think we as media buyers probably would be worried. But because it's so short-term and erratic, I think there are deals and efficiencies to be had regardless of a network's share position.
Well, just on that, I just wanted to bring in, because speaking today, we've had a number of CEOs of our top media companies, and James Warburton, the new Network 10 CEO, among them speaking there. This was at the AFR and Macquarie Future Forum, focusing on media. And James Warburton was saying that, look, it is a difficult market at the moment, but he thinks that sentiment is shifting towards the network, particularly with some wins for its Super Sunday schedule.
In the 8-9 weeks that we've been on air with Sunday, we're #1 under 50. We've got a number of programs in the top 10. We've been rushed by advertisers to get involved in that platform, which is great. But I think more importantly, a lot of the work that was done, particularly by Lachlan through last year, we now have the winning multi-channel combination under 50. So the combination of 11 and 1, where we had a flawed strategy, if you like, we now have a winning combination, which we must move very quickly to monetise, which obviously we're doing. And then I think outside of that, it's about creative renewal. You don't just turn up and pick a bunch of new programs. You've got to go through a process, and you've got to generate your ideas and commission in a more aggressive way. And I'm the first to admit we're a little skinny from a programming point of view at the moment, but in 6 or 7 weeks, we have a number of formats and a number of hours in addition to the return of MasterChef that really make us a solid proposition, and media buyers see that, and that sentiment's sort of coming through for us. Lots of new executives. I'm just taking the ad break, the whole ad break. There's a lot I can talk about, but there's a lot of momentum coming in the business, and we'll be a much more competitive force. And our numbers in overall terms are up 9% in 18 to 49. So we're far from out of this race.
There's a lot of things there to talk about, I guess. It was probably wishful thinking a little bit to think you guys are going to be all over it. You'll probably wait and see a little bit. And no doubt MasterChef will do well, whether there'll be much else to back it up. But as you were saying, Toby, you guys had probably factored in that they'd have a quiet start and you'd be overweight in 7 to start with.
Yeah, I think part of the nature of what agencies do is they make sure they have deals that are flexible enough to work for their clients. So as soon as your deal isn't working for your client, then you've got a big problem as an agency. So that's probably the most important thing, is to make sure you have those right deals in place for those networks. In terms of what James is saying there, I personally think he's probably quite right to be quite optimistic about the future. I think they do have some good stuff coming through. I think MasterChef will do well for them. I think they are structuring better for the future, and they're structuring themselves more to be ready fit for purpose in the future too. They are going to start, come across some stiff competition though. The other 2 networks will not lie down, and there'll be it'll be a very interesting battle to watch.
Yeah, I think, and also just on that, in terms of the stiff competition, I think 9 have obviously got an interesting position at the moment. While they're tracking quite nicely at the moment, the best is yet to come for that network. I mean, obviously you've got proven success in terms of ratings with The Block. That's going to be enormous. That's just around the corner. The Voice internationally has performed very well, and the lineup locally looks to be very solid. And obviously the Olympics. And I think the key to their success is, yes, the Olympics itself, but what they do from a marketing point of view to leverage the pre-games activity, what they do within the actual Olympics games to actually secure them for the back half. But overall, I think 9 probably looking very positive.
Yeah.
Just interesting too, hearing what James Warburton was saying about the packaging that they've done of their digital channels and primary channel there. obviously, unless you've got a big show like a My Kitchen Rules, most of your shows are going to get small numbers. So does that mean, you know, reaching that digital audience is very crucial for you guys?
Well, so reach is a really interesting concept because actually reach is really a poor measure for an advertising, for communication. So reach is one measure of audience, but actually has nothing to do with engagement. So actually smaller audiences, more targeted audiences often offer even more efficient and effective environments for advertisers. And actually we should never really be talking about reach, we should always be talking about influence. That's really what we should be trying to achieve. It's something that we spend a lot of time at PhD talking about. It's a really important thing. So measure for the networks, it's not that relevant really for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, ultimately, if you are a mass reach national advertiser, you do need to get access to those types of programs, the top 10, top 5 programs. But the thing that the digital channels actually offer is twofold. One, it actually helps, I suppose, deal with the stripping out of what's actually occurring on the main channel in terms of audience loss. But as Toby said, it actually provides more discrete targeting opportunities for various advertisers.
Andrew, you booked for Toyota, and you've got to reach those, as you said, you've got to be in those top 10 shows. Do you have the ability to sort of move in and out? I mean, are you expecting to see some newcomers into that 10? You mentioned some of the shows coming on 9, and some of the stuff on 10 sounds all right, but then that's when you sort of don't think, well, maybe the 7's going to be sitting there with things that are even better.
Yeah, look, I mean, certainly 7 is the network that most people went in with the most confidence when all those program reels were being launched at the end of last year, and so far they've actually probably exceeded the expectations. Look, the proof will be in the pudding with 10. I mean, obviously James is a terrific manager, is obviously a terrific CEO, so it's really what he's able to actually achieve in the very short time that he's been at the helm in terms of bringing those programs that are actually going to deliver for the likes of Toyota and other bigger clients.
What about the breakfast offering too? Because we've seen now with 10, with its breakfast show there, is this something that you think that they actually needed to address?
Yeah, I personally do. I think they had a big gap there and they were, really were losing out in audience terms. So I think it's the right thing to do, and I think that's backed up. They did the right thing with the Circle as well, to take on those other morning shows, and that's been positive for them. The numbers are still quite small, so obviously off a very low base, but they've actually doubled that audience in quite a short period of time. There's a lot of work to go in there. I'm not suggesting for a second that they're going to rest on the product and where it is. We'll see a lot more development there. But I think one of the interesting things is mornings and breakfast in particular is a really big area for bragging rights for the networks. So I think you're going to see.
So it is going to take time. And as Toby said, the interesting thing is everyone's out there talking about the lacklustre ratings. You can't actually buy a spot in the property for a couple of weeks. So from an advertising revenue point of view, it's actually probably not doing so bad.
Yeah, and actually just on that, one of the interesting things is that what the effect of the show has been to actually grow the total breakfast ratings. So total breakfast is up as well. So the whole segment has actually seen growth, which is actually pretty positive.
Got be small rates though, wouldn't they? For 26,000 people one day this week. So when you compared to much, so you'd have to be probably getting a good deal.
Cost effective.
That's a good way of putting it. Let's just turn to subscription TV, because also appearing today at the AFR Macquarie Future Forum, Austar CEO John Porter, he was speaking about the challenge of trying to increase subscriptions in an environment with ambivalent consumers, new free-to-air digital channels, and structural change, of course, underway.
So what's really driving penetration and what's driving, I think the market's continued interest in pay TV platforms is their ability to leverage that broad-based consumer relationship and deliver additional products, and to be really at the pointy end, the forefront of managing convergence in through the television and the internet and into the home. I think for us in Australia to drive to the next level, I think we're going to have to redefine what subscription television really is in this market. It can no longer be just a single source for paid television programming. It needs to be the trusted advisor for consumers when it comes to the integration of IP media and broadcast media.
We've heard Foxtel and both Austar talk about the effect of the free-to-air multi-channel offering on their sort of subscription sale to their customers. Has it made advertisers reassess how they use subscription TV too, and what you can get from the multi-channels?
Look, at the end of the day, there are two things that actually affect revenue. That's audience and it's innovation in my mind. Regardless of the subscription levels, I know they haven't been as positive as what both Foxtel and Oztal were hoping for. They've actually seen a greater increase in audience in the free-to-airs. I think that sub-TV last year actually increased 7, 8, 9%.
Yeah,
that's right. So, and with that, that industry, from an advertising point of view, from an Ignite and MCN point of view, have done a terrific job in terms of providing advertising innovations. So the migration of dollars is actually going to follow both those things, and it probably will. Hence why a lot of the worldwide predictions for pay TV and subscription TV are continuing to actually increase.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think traditionally, money has followed audiences, which is lazy planning, if you like, which is obviously the last thing that any agency really should be pursuing. But one of the interesting things I think about the digital free-to-air stations is that they've offered consumers for the first time a whole breadth of additional choice, and people love choice. And the more they're exposed to that choice, I think the more that's going to play to the benefit of subscription TV, actually, because people are going to actually want more of that individual choice.
Just speaking of subscriptions and turning to the publishers and the challenges for them, and James, we did see during the week the Australian releasing some initial figures for their partial paywall, this freemium model that they've been using.
That 30,000 people, they've said, have sampled at some stage, either bought an app or bought a subscription package, in addition to about 10,000 existing print subscribers who've sort of added on to their current deal. Those numbers are very small, aren't they? I guess in terms of overall newspaper readership. Is that encouraging, do you think, to that? Or are you worried about paywalls could sort of decimate the big free audiences newspapers have been getting?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think that the first thing we need to understand, if this is the trend for news going down the track, is what percentage is going to be available exclusively to the people who actually pay for subscriptions versus what's currently available for free online. And I think that if that percentage is extraordinarily high and the subscribers are high, then it possibly is a problem. I think that if the content is sort of contained to, say, opinion-based or deeper and richer opinion-based content, and it's around that sort of low to medium side and the subscribers actually go up, then I think that actually represents an opportunity for us as advertisers, because you've got a relatively clutter-free environment, potentially the opportunity to target more deeply if you can tap into their subscriber base and their demographics. But so it ultimately, I think, depends on the percentage that's currently available online and the percentage that's going to be ripped away from that.
Yeah, consumers will define whether this is successful or not, and it's going to be a simple business equation made around business decisions and where the greatest revenue outcomes will come. It's always been that subscriptions and advertising money have been in play together and across the print marketplace. That ratio of how they fit in will change. I think coming back to your point about innovation, actually, Andrew, is really interesting. What happens around a lot of this digital space is a real opportunity for us to target consumers and engage them in a very different way, and that becomes really relevant for advertisers. So more discrete audiences, better targeted and better engaged is only a good thing for advertisers.
It's interesting, obviously Fairfax Media, it has a paywall around the AFR, but free elsewhere. Interesting to hear what the CEO of Fairfax Media, Greg Hywood, had to say a little earlier today, saying he remains to be convinced about paywalls.
You look at the news media sites in the US, there's one newspaper company in the top 10, and that's the New York Times, and it's number 7. If you look at the news media sites in Australia, smh.com is number 1 and theages.com is number 3. So we are building markets. Now, if there's some parts of our content online that we can sell, we will, but we're about accumulating markets that we can attach to advertisers, and that's our focus. Now, we've got some very detailed work being done internally around this, and we'll make some specific calls around what we price and how we bundle our content.
Talking about this stuff, it sort of can make your head hurt a little bit, can't it? When you sort of wonder what the consumer must make of it when they go onto a site, when there's stuff that you can't access, free stuff you can be a bit confusing. Is Fairfax maybe right to sit back at this stage and just say, look, we'll play the free card while the others sort it out?
I think it is that business model. I think it's quite simple. There's a really simple equation. How much money they think they can make in terms of subscriptions, whether through a hybrid or a full pay or non-pay, and what that means there to the potential revenues they have from other sources. I think it'll come down to sort of one simple place. I think this speaks to media, the landscape in general. What's that quote? You know, change will never be this slow again. That's exactly what the environment we all live in. And you know, these constant changes are important for us to, as advertisers representing clients, is to stay abreast of them as best we can, to bring the best opportunities to them. But the business models are changing just as fast as the opportunities are.
All right, well, it's been great to talk to you both today. Thank you so much for coming on the program, Toby Hack and Andrew Lamb. We are taking a quick break on Media Week. After that, Eddie Maguire in the hot seat over a big interview and Ray Hadley's League Twitter critics.